Call the meeting to order. Ms. Duncan, call the roll, please.
Chair Stevens.
Here.
Vice Chair Martin. Secretary Fletcher.
Present.
Regent Jackson.
I am present, but my camera is turned like the wrong way here. So I'm here, but I'm on the side, so forgive me.
I believe you are there. Something keeps floating in. Regent Rabinowitz. Regent Green.
Here.
And our advisory members, Regent Herding
Here.
and Regent Witten. And did someone just?
It looks like Brittany just joined, Pam.
Okay, Regent Witten. All right, we will say that she is here. We have a quorum. We may proceed.
All right. The agenda, Hannah, please.
Yes, sir. Pulling it up right now. So this is our agenda for our March 23rd and 24th meeting, which will be at Bluegrass Community and Technical College in Lexington. We did look at this last month, but this will serve as a final review before the quarterly meeting. So we will start on Thursday, March 23rd at 1:30. We will have a call to order, press notification, roll call. Then, of course, as we have done in previous meetings, which I think started 2 meetings ago, we will have an open comment period. And then we will welcome a college presentation by Dr. Acapo, who is Bluegrass's president.
Excuse me, Hannah, I have a question. In the last ones we've started earlier, is there some reason? I think we had lunch at 12 and then we started like at 12:45, 1. Is there any, is that correct, or we just changed to 1:30?
We have started before with a working lunch, but I don't believe we will need to do that for this meeting. I think we can start a little bit later unless we want to start at noon, but we were going to give a little bit more time for people to arrive and have lunch and get settled in, since we will not be at the system office, we'll be at the college.
That's fine. Anyone else want to make a comment about that? Feel free to do so. If not, we'll start. We usually have been starting like at 11:30 or 12 o'clock working lunch. So if anyone wants to eat lunch or have started then, that's fine. If not, we'll do it as Hannah is presenting. Hearing none, we'll move on to the next one. Go ahead. Excuse me, Hannah, go ahead.
Okay, well, we will move into a report from Chair Stevens, and then we will have a report from Acting President Larry Ferguson, which will include, let me see, it looks like Vice Chair Martin has just joined us. If you want to make a note on the record for that, Parliamentarian Duncan. We will have a President's report from Acting President Ferguson, and then which will cover a legislative update. We expect that to be very lengthy and in depth, as this will be the week before the session ends on March 30th. We will then move into agenda items. We'll have some updates from Vice President Shook on employment success. Then we will move into learner success, and that report will come from Chancellor Williams. She will be giving an update on the online course quality assurance pilot and data from that pilot, as well as some other initiatives that her office is looking at. We will also, of course, ratify, as we do at every meeting, the college's candidates for credentials. And then to wrap up that Thursday, we will go into executive session.
Looks like Regent Fletcher has a hand up.
Regent Fletcher.
I was just waiting to be recognized by the chair, but okay.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just didn't want to speak out of turn. So
Okay.
based on based on the email that we got today, will there be information on the pilot? Maybe I'm missing something, but I'm understanding that maybe that's been put on hold.
And I will let Dr. Ferguson, I'm sure, can speak to that.
Yes, Regent Fletcher, the Board of Regents pilot, our original one, which required keys, training, and then the pilot courses, that has not been put on hold at all. So that's what Dr. Williams will be providing an update on. The only thing that's temporarily on pause is the PLT expansion of that. And so that is the only thing that's on pause. And we will meet after the Board of Regents meeting with representatives from Big Sandy Community Technical College, which brought forth the resolution to hear their concerns. And then we'll quickly discuss with the PLT what they want to change, if anything, on the expansion. It gets confusing because there were two totally separate things.
Wait, does that answer your question?
It answers the question. I guess this may not be the meeting to have that conversation in, but I do have some questions around that. So is this the place to ask those, Chair Stevens, or should I wait until the board meeting to ask?
No, you can ask those questions, and there's questions that Dr. Ferguson or he needs to provide. He may not have the answer now, but he will provide them for you. So go ahead. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead and ask those questions.
So with everything that's happened in the last few days and a lot of, I think, misunderstanding around what the board had asked for in the pilot with the online learning, and, you know, us trying to make that what I call the 20,000 foot, you know, view, broad brushstroke kind of policy, saying that we were looking for improvement in student learning opportunities, especially with online learning, knowing that there was a gap between in-person and online. I'm not really sure how it went from what we suggested as a board of regents to what has transpired in the last week or so, but I'm very concerned that there was some kind of impression that the board was overreaching, or that we were trying to dictate how online learning was done or anything like that. That certainly was not the case. And I guess I'm just trying to get clarification about how this erupted into what it has become in the last week, when our intention was pure and our goal was to see students that were taking online courses have a better opportunity to have the same sort of outcomes as their peers who were in class settings. So that's I guess that's a statement more than it's a question. But the question is, after reading through the emails that we've gotten in the last few days and the one we received today, was there not shared governance on this going forward? My understanding is the PLT then took what we recommended, and there was this expansion, which until this past week I didn't know anything about. And still I'm not sure that I'm clear on what that is, but I guess that's what the update we're going to receive is. I just hate heading into a board meeting and feeling like I don't know what's going on.
Well, I will try, Regent Fletcher. If you recall, in that December meeting, Dr. Leah Simpson and Dr. Williams provided an update to the board on what is termed as the Board of Regents Quality Pilot. You know, that was the response to what the board had asked for. And so that had already started and was done, but there was a conversation with the board, and there were several regents who responded, maybe saying that we should move quicker, we should move faster, we should, you know, intensify our efforts with that. So from that, both the Chancellor, Dr. Simpson, and the PLT, in concert with the distance learning peer team, come up with an expansion of what was already existed as a pilot. And that's the differentiation between the two. And then that particular program, the expansion, was rolled out and discussed with our academic council. So there was shared governance. They looked at it. They seemed to be okay with it. But once it got in the hands of the general faculty throughout the colleges, they seemed to have some concerns. Their concerns was this particular expansion of the pilot, was it punitive to them? And I really don't, I can't say whether I think it is or it's not. I want to allow them, the Big Sandy faculty came forward, but we've had other faculty at other colleges say that they were willing to sign on to this resolution because they had concerns about what the PLT had done, not the Board of Regents. And so that's why the email that I sent earlier explained that there's no need for them to come and complain to the Board of Regents. Once we clarify that with them, it's not an issue with our original pilot that the board asked for and then what we did. It's with this expansion. So that's why they're going to meet actually with the president's leadership team, and then we'll revisit, do we need to make tweaks or changes to the expansion? Our intent, the president's leadership team, was only to take this a step further so that we move quicker toward achieving what the board asked for, and that was an improvement in quality in comparing online courses to NC courses. And I know that that was originally what the intent was. And as you said, it was a more global overarching picture. So we did that. We expanded that. That was nothing that the board had done. And so we're dealing with their challenge, if that makes sense.
Okay, so in follow-up to that, is there, and I've been asking several people this question this week because I'm just trying to understand the internal processes, but I feel a little bit like there was this big reaction and it resulted in a resolution. Where were the conversations in between? Like, what is the process for the faculty to bring forth a concern without it, to me, accelerating to the level of a resolution?
Well, the draft of that expansion was shared with them through their chief academic officers at the college, and also shared with them by the distance learning peer team, which is their representative. Each college has a representative there that deals nothing but with the online instruction model. So they had an opportunity. I just don't think that they honestly took an in-depth look at it. So when they came back to the academic council, they wrote the academic council. These are chief academic officers for the college. They responded to the chancellor. They were in agreement to move forward. So if there was a breakdown, it was in the communication between the faculty at the campuses and with their chief academic officer and their peer team members. And so once they had essentially blessed that, those two groups, again, shared governance, it was brought to the presidents, and the presidents looked at it. Each of us had in turn had internal conversations with our chief academic officer, myself, my distance learning leader is Dr. Sarah Brown. We had those conversations. We felt that it was all fine. It had gone through those two groups, the chancellor's office, and then we didn't hear anything negative until the faculty at Big Sandy assembled, as they often do, and they decided to put forth this resolution. They were confused as well. The original version of the resolution I sent to you, they had named inappropriately, and they had called it the Board of Regents pilot. It was not that. And then that was caught. We caught, it's like, well, why did they call it that? Even in the header on that particular document, it said that, but that was not what they were talking about. They were talking about the PLT expansion, not the Board of Regents pilot. But there was, I can assure you, there were multiple layers of where different faculty had exposure to it, where the chief faculty person, the academic officer had exposure to it, and then they provided feedback. So all those folks had said, this is fine, before the presidents actually looked at it and said, okay, let's go forward. But sometimes, it's not often, sometimes the communications process fails. And so in this case, it did, at least for the Big Sandy faculty. And then once they did that, then other faculty started, commenting on it. They have not asked to read that aloud. They could do that in a Senate meeting that'll happen tomorrow. But as of this meeting that we're in, they've not asked to read that proclamation aloud. They could, but they haven't.
Okay, so I just want to make sure everybody is together on this and that everybody feels like this is worthwhile and that it's moving in the right direction. And even if there's a pause on it for the moment, I mean, we all agree there needs to be an opportunity for improvement, right, in online learning. I think, am I missing something there? I mean, This is
And no-
going to go forward, correct?
But
It's
yes,
just-
it is going to go forward. What I can't tell you now until we give an opportunity for them that they've basically requested to speak with the presidents about their concerns. And what it really comes down to is looking at the 10% differential between comparing that to an in-seat class versus an online class. And so it's the mechanics, it's getting in the weeds with it. For example, I have one instructor at Ashland who has been considered by Blackboard an exemplary online instructor. This instructor has multiple sections of CIT 105. They're all great. He's got one section that did not meet that criteria. So based on what we had written, the PLT had agreed upon, we would do remedial training with him. Well, the truth is he could train anybody in the system how to teach an online class. So we've got to look at those minute details because that makes no sense for that professor that we would push him through remedial training or discipline him or redirect him in any way when all of the other sections he had were very good. You know, the faculty's position is, if you read that resolution, is there are some things that they cannot control. One of the faculty members, Big Sandy, said to me she had one section that did not meet that 10% threshold. She had 7 people who dropped out of the class. Well, that impacts her ability to meet what we were saying she had to. And she checked all 7 students for failing all of their other classes. So those 7 students in her one section that had a bad score, she had no control over that, most likely. So we have to figure out a way that we're going to hold them accountable in the spirit of continuous improvement, but also be cognizant of the fact that there are some things you can't control. You know, I know myself in my time when I did teach, occasionally you just got a class that didn't perform, you know, or for whatever reason, that particular class did not meet the learning outcomes that you wanted there. So we've got to have a methodology to look at the outliers. For example, my one instructor in Ashland, you know, I'm not going to put him through remedial training when he's probably the best online instructor I have. And every other section that he does is very good. And perhaps I know that Dr. Jackson's on here. She might expand on that. I know she's looked at it closely as well. But that's where we got, is when they really started digging down into the weeds of what we had asked them to do. There were just things that they felt were beyond their control.
But as you mentioned, there is a process for addressing any outliers or addressing, you know, for that one person to be able to say, these 7 students were failing all of their other classes. This is not an instructor dependent, you know, issue. And I totally appreciate that process. I think I just, you know, after talking to all these different people and getting bombarded with information from people who were like, you know, you may not know what's going on. Thank you, because I do like to know what's going on. I don't want to get into the weeds of the operations of it, but it sounds like that there is a process in place. Not every single person that hits that metric threshold is going to automatically be put through. I know what the policy said, but the policy has to allow for some variance. And it sounds to me like that it totally does. And that maybe this was just that miscommunication and that we don't necessarily need to scrap the pilot or scrap the project, you know, altogether, but just better educate people on it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. There is a line in there that basically says if a faculty person has gone through KEYS training, they've gone through a remedial redesign or optimization of the course, and it is still not meeting the standards of whatever it is, that then that's left up to administration. And that's where administration, the chief academic officer specifically, would have to look at that and say, well, it's one section. It's not their whole body of work. So we probably don't need to do anything right now, but we monitor that. And if we see that showing up again, it's not an outlier. It could be an actual cause and effect of whatever they're doing in the course. So that's the thing I think that they got a little concerned with. And just to be totally frank, this came from Big Sandy. It's a very good college, but it's also a college that's had an interim president for some time. I think there's probably some concerns there, and Dr. Jackson is part of that faculty, about, you know, what does that mean? Because they're not really clear right now who their long-term administrator is going to be. I mean, who the president's going to be. And so that creates feelings with them worrying about, you know, will someone come in and be using this for a punitive or disciplinary thing, which was never the intent. The intent is to provide adequate professional development so that we ensure we have continuous improvement. And that's really all we were after. So it could be just not understanding that, or a couple of presidents pointed that out. Well, there's leeway in there to say, this is all that happens next is a conversation, with your supervisor, whoever that might be. And that's it.
I see Regent Jackson has had her hand up for a bit. Would you like to weigh in, Regent Jackson?
Thank you, Pam. I do not necessarily want to jump in front of Joe or Hannah, though. I think both of them had their hand up even before me. So if they have something to say, I will definitely wait until they finish. Are you sure? Okay. Dr. Ferguson and Regent Fletcher, I appreciate the conversation about this. And I can say I do believe that the halt is a very good idea. Sometimes I think when we write policy or procedure on things, until we actually put that into action, we don't necessarily see the positives and the negatives of that. Sometimes it is interpreted one way again until you see it in action, and then you can see where someone could use that, as Dr. Ferguson referenced, to go a different direction if they wanted to go with that. So I think it is imperative that we slow down and really do a great job with this. I know we've had conversation about not having data over the years and things like this, but I think even Regent Whitten brought this up in our meeting in December, what a massive undertaking this is. So I think we all agree on the quality. I think my faculty are very committed to the quality of online learning. I myself did not realize what this looked like in action. But when you see it, and they will be able to present this, I won't speak for them, but when you see it in action, you see the pitfalls that this could create for faculty and not really achieve what we ultimately want to achieve, which is improved online learning. And if that was our goal, and it was, I think, at the Regent level, if that was our goal to make a better online environment, this particular formatting and approach operationally is not hitting that mark. For example, if you say you have to be successful with an A, B, or C, well, what happens to the D students who also get that point on their transcript? That's a success for some students. An E obviously is failing, but a W grade also counts against the faculty in this particular model. We know we cannot keep students in a classroom who come up with financial issues, familial issues, all kinds of issues why students want to leave. We all know they can withdraw up till midterm without the approval of the faculty. So how do you control that kind of variable, yet still be accountable for it? You can't control it, but you're still answering for it. So I think once we take time to listen and to kind of see what they're talking about, I think it definitely can be revisited. And with shared governance and input from very experienced faculty that want nothing more than quality in their courses, when they have that voice and can actually share some exemplars and some examples of how this could or could not work, I think it's going to be really clear for us that it's the idea and the premise is really good, but we probably just need to take a little different approach to it. So I'm very glad that we are slowing down and looking at this because I think that's probably the only way forward, I think, in a positive way to get what it is that we all want to achieve.
Okay, Regent Fletcher, you still have your hand up. Would you like to make another comment?
Yeah, I just put it back up to ask, because after what Dr. Ferguson said about the CAOs, the chancellor, the peer team members, all of that, do faculty feel very comfortable going to these people that they've elected to represent them or have been appointed to represent them to share all of these concerns? Because again, if this is a process that's in place, maybe that process needs to be looked at as well if there was a failure for this to be communicated effectively in the structure as it currently exists. And I just, as always, you will always hear me try to advocate for faculty and for students in this role. And so again, if there was a breakdown before all of this happened, do we need to look at that process as well as this pilot? And do you know if there was feedback, Dr. Jackson or any of the other faculty or staff reps in these peer groups and in these other channels before this became, like I said, this conversation?
I would ask Regent Fletcher, are you saying those that represent them? Are you meaning myself and Brianna as elected board members representing them? Or are you talking about the administrative structure inside the institution that would represent them on the org chart?
Structure that would have led to, because as Dr. Ferguson said, they didn't know there was any problem when they pushed this forward, because the CAOs, the chancellor, the peer team, the members of these groups that had already met, they weren't hearing anything until after, or Or is this really just a case of it looked great on paper, but when the rubber hit the road, it didn't move it forward the way that we expected it to?
Yeah, I couldn't speak necessarily for the entire body of faculty, how they would perceive that organizational structure and the movement of their voice, but I can say, and we obviously have the organizational structure in place with people's roles assigned and they know what those are. And I think people did communicate in the way that they should, as far as taking it from the president's leadership team through the administrative leadership to faculty. I can share, I was a little surprised. I did not see what this looked like in action until the meeting. However, would I necessarily be involved in that? Not based on the policy. So I think that is, again, a reminder, as I just shared, that it is a good idea to take time and think things through very well. You know, we kind of all know what we want, but if path A doesn't work and we're seeing roadblocks, then it's okay to slow down and say, well, let's look at path B, because we all want to arrive at the same place. We now know it has been put into action and we know the pros and the cons of that. So we need to evaluate it and we need to look to see what kind of modifications need to be done to kind of keep us moving forward.
So, Board Liaison Rivera has one comment, and then Regent Witten has her hand up.
Thank you. I'm going to say something and attempt to bridge the gap, I think, where Regent Fletcher is and maybe other members of the committee. I don't think that this was a failure in procedure or process. I think that there were concerns, and those concerns were made known to the college presidents, and those college presidents made them known to previous leadership. But this was a decision made by our previous president to push this forward. And I will say that it was done because there was some, I guess, stress felt that the board wanted this done, and perhaps it wasn't the procedure that failed, but maybe just a gap in leadership to say, let's slow this process down. Let's look at this. Let's hear from the faculty who actually have to implement this and see what the gaps may be. So I don't want to try to interfere and say what really happened here, but hopefully that sheds some light that this was a decision that was made perhaps too quickly by former leadership without going through the normal channels that would have allowed for these concerns to be fully vetted and played out. I hope that helps.
Well, thank you, Hannah.
This is Regent Witten. I would second everything that Hannah just said. But Regent Fletcher, I would also address with you, because of that, as Dr. Ferguson alluded to, you know, the distance learning peer team was involved. They looked at it. The CAOs looked at this new, right, the expansion, the PLT expansion. All these people looked at it, but the question was, and it's different at different colleges. Our CAO met with us as a faculty very immediately to we looked at it, we spoke with her about it, and then she came to us. Now, I don't know how that happened at every other college, so it might have been a situation. And Regent Jackson, you feel free to speak of how it unraveled at your institution, but it may have been a situation where faculty did not get to see it before it was approved and expanded and voted on by PLT. So I think different colleges could have handled the process differently. I'm just speaking in terms of the way it came at ours. So, but I think that was the thing, right? I mean, previous administration at KCTCS kind of put it to the PLT, and Dr. Ferguson, if I'm speaking out of turn, please tell me. But I mean, he kind of drove that to them, and they felt that they needed to take action for continuing improvement, and they felt that that was their, that was on them to push that then to their CAOs and then through the distance learning peer team and faculty. I just think that the push was so quick that all interested parties were not made fully aware of everything prior to saying yes, or saying yes on the vote anyway.
Thank you for that insight.
Regent Hurdy, did you have a comment previously that you wanted to make?
I did, but Dr. Ferguson covered everything I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay, great. And then I see that Regent Jackson has a reply to Regent Whitten.
Yes, I really appreciate that, Regent Whitten. And I can say for our college, we did not meet and vote on anything like this to my knowledge. I think this went more from distance learning directly to faculty. I mean, like implementation of it. Again, I hope I'm not misspeaking that, but I don't miss faculty meetings and I do not recall this being brought forward to be voted on or anything like that. So again, it probably does vary, but I can say this. Regardless of how it is rolled out, once you fully get rolling, I don't know how far you are into it, but as colleges roll this out, I think eventually this is going to bubble to the top that you're going to see the operational definitions within this policy and the implementation of said policy is going to create the same problems across colleges. Because I think fundamentally there are some really good, strong things in there, but I think there are some weak links that really need some more eyes on it. To see if we can improve this process, because ultimately there are definitely flaws that are going to come up.
Okay, I don't mean to move us on, but this is becoming a really substantive discussion that may need the full board input. So I think we should get back to our itinerary and our agenda for the full board meeting.
And the next item?
Yes, sir. So we are now on Friday, and we will start our meeting on Friday morning. Again, we'll be at Bluegrass. We'll start at 8:30. We will have our last section of agenda items, which cover organization success. We will have an update from the Huron representatives and General Counsel Duncan to present to the full board. As you know, they've been making interim updates to the committee, but they will be here at the March meeting to present to the full board. We will then have a update about our Board of Regents Audit Committee meeting, which is set for March 13th. So Chair Stevens will deliver that report, or may ask Interim Vice President Combs to deliver that information. We then have 3 asset preservation construction projects that will need approval. Again, these have been approved previously, but because they are exceeding the scope of that $1 million threshold, they are being brought back for further approval by the board. And those include a Henderson mechanical equipment and controls, Jefferson parking garage scope increase, and the Bluegrass administration building project expansion. I believe I saw a hand go up. Sorry.
I do not see one.
Okay. And after the approval of those projects, or the discussion and vote on those projects, we will then move into talking about the Board of Regent required reserves. If you'll recall, this item was actually on the agenda for December for a vote, but we decided to delay it until March so that we could bring back some more salient information for the board about what those required reserves should be.
Dr. Ferguson has a comment on that. Dr. Ferguson? Reference you and Buddy.
Yes, we're going to bring to the board some scenarios around what that might be, and Buddy will provide all that information.
Thank you.
We will have a ratification of the OPEB, and I'm blanking on what OPEB actually stands for. Sorry for the acronyms. For those who are not familiar with them, I'll let General Counsel Duncan say what it actually is, but we will be voting to ratify administrative committee decisions around that.
It's other than pension employee benefits. So it's health benefits and anything else that might be included, but for us, post-retiree health benefits.
Okay, thank you. You'd think I would know those by now. And then we will have a ratification of personnel actions presented by Vice President Hillis. We have these every meeting. Then the remaining items are information. we will have information about our forecasted 23-24 tuition. Of course, this is set by CPE, but we are figuring out and finding out from CPE what those parameters may be. Dr. Ferguson, I don't know if you want to speak any more to that.
I'll address that, and yes, Buddy will give some information on that as well as the next item. And I have asked him to give that out in hard copy so that every board member can take that. Of course, there's no action on it, but can study it. He's going to give in reference to raises, the information about the percentages and what the reserves are, and how the anticipated reserves are all at the community colleges at the end of the year. Then if percentage raises, what colleges are going to be able to meet that. Now, maybe some colleges cannot meet that. So I think the board needs to be aware of that. And then he will give us a report, a hard copy of COVID money, breakdown of how each college, how much they've got left, and when they have to spend it by. So it will be, and I've asked Buddy in this meeting as well as the next one that for me only, I guess is, but I've given to the rest of the board to please give us hard copies of those financial things so that we can take time and study those, especially at this meeting and as we go forward. Of course, they may change between the June meeting, but you will have that information and the board can make the best decision possible.
And then at our June meeting, those items will be brought forward for a vote for the compensation and tuition. And the last two information items, we will hear from our Vice Chancellor of Research and Policy Analysis about our strategic plan and our key performance indicator targets. And then we will look at the 2024 calendar and the dates for those board meetings. And then we will be looking ahead after this meeting to our June 15th and 16th meeting, which will be at West Kentucky Community and Technical College in Paducah.
You all that are Eastern Kentucky or Northern Kentucky, it may be a 2-day drive. Hope at least the weather will be nice. Hopefully it'll be nice and not stormy. So yes, and we're looking forward to that. Is there any other items that need to be added or any other items to discuss?
Being from the eastern part of the state, I'm actually looking forward to going out there. I've never been to Paducah, so this will be our first.
Well, that is a beautiful, great place.
I think Regent Green has.
Yes, Kimberly?
This might be a question for the full board, but will we be doing like a self-evaluation? I know we did one last year and Regent Jackson did a fabulous job of working on that survey instrument. So I just wondered if we would be looking at that maybe this year. I think we did it last year in late spring.
Mm-hmm. That will come out after the March meeting, and we typically, or the chair typically chooses one person to lead that initiative to do the board self-evaluation, and it's a SACS requirement, so we have to do that. And then those results are always presented at our June meeting.
And I would like to comment that just yesterday, I saw that AGB has put out a new white paper on board self-evaluation, and it incorporates much of what is happening in our world right now, post-COVID. So the board may want to look at that white paper prior to determining what areas of self-evaluation they should take up this year.
And in reference to evaluations, I would ask Hannah, you know that we had talked at the December meeting about a new format and that had been developed by Karen and another consultant with Barry, Wendy, and I. signing off on it. So Hannah, I'd like that presented too, because that will be the evaluation, I would assume, going forward that we use, if there's any changes in that. So I know that the board was aware of that, and we were going to do that in March, but Ms. Duncan, I think that we need to probably go ahead and put that on there, or at least the board be aware of the evaluation tool, because we changed it in that regard. Pat, you had another question?
Just a comment, Chair Stevens, thank you. Will that also include actual aligning of the instrument components with like accreditation, for example? In leading that charge last year, that was one of the things that, of course, I recommended with that, is to ensure that we are actually asking the right questions to ascertain the information that we're really supposed to be garnering. So I'm hoping in this new instrument that it really has been aligned very well with accreditation standards and things like that, to make sure we are aiming at the right things through this tool. So I haven't seen it, I guess, to my knowledge yet.
Just to be clear.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. The evaluation tool that Chair Stevens is discussing has to do with presidential evaluation, and what Regent Green asked about was board self-evaluation. So just to make sure we have those two differentiated.
Yeah, the board self-evaluation, I think, is the part that I led, and we were talking about, how boards look at themselves and are we evaluating the right things? And I think the instrument had been used repeatedly, but in looking at it, I said, I'm not sure that it is encompassing everything that we want to include in a full evaluation of the board. So I didn't know if there'd been a group looking at that, or moving forward, what we would do with that.
As far as I know, and I'm sorry, Hannah, I'm blanking all of a sudden on everything. Can you address that? I don't believe we put a work group together to come up with that, but I think, as she said, that would probably come after the March meeting and discussion surrounding that. But Hannah?
I think the key point being after session there.
Yeah.
But to Regent Jackson's point, the original survey was done with assistance from the Association of Governing Boards, what we call AGB, and it was the template to use. But of course, as General Counsel just said, there's a new white paper out with some further guidance. So we'll be looking at that. And I'm sure, Regent Jackson, that we would love your assistance in creating a new template that does ensure we are addressing what we should under our accreditation standards.
I don't care a bit to contribute to that. I'm sure others as well probably have ideas about that, but I would be happy to help in any way I could.
All right, great. Thank you.
Welcome.
Regent Green, you got a question? No. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, I'd like to make a statement in reference to what Regent Fletcher talked about is, if as policies come out and are implemented, if there's problems, please, there is a problem procedure to go through. And evidently, there was not a roadblock, but a blockage, or it didn't get where it was supposed to be, is what I'm saying. So, the board would be glad to entertain. It's an open board, and we want your comments and concerns, but it needs to be addressed at the local level first. And if it's not addressed at the community colleges, then you need to come to the systems office, to that various department, and where it needs to be addressed. And I would tell any of the faculty and staff, if you can't get any satisfaction answers, you have Regents, and pick the phone up and call. And certainly, as Regent Fletcher said, we don't know. We know what the policy, what we were trying to do. If it's not working, go back through it. I use the Army terminology, the chain of command. Go back through, and if you feel like that you're not being heard, then I would encourage you to reach out at the systems office. And if, I hope they never would, if they're kind of deaf, I won't give you a response, reach out to the chairman or a regent. And that's the only way that we can help solve these problems without, I looked at the resolution and immediately I called Dr. Ferguson. I said, what did we do wrong? And he explained to me. So Wendy, I really appreciate you bringing that up because, and you know, as we roll out programs and have programs, if there's glitches in it, hey, and I, to all of the staff, take it back through the appropriate chain of command and then take it, if it's not satisfactory or you feel like you're not getting to be heard, take it back to the systems office. Because the systems office main purpose is to serve 16 community colleges.
Regent Fletcher.
I think I want to make sure that everyone understands that there needs to be a culture of continuous improvement. So a policy goes out, it doesn't sit well, there's a process in place to take what's currently there and improve upon it. But I think it sets the wrong precedent, perhaps, if we don't like something and then we just immediately halt everything. There are parts of it that, as Dr. Jackson mentioned earlier, that look very good and will work very well and everyone can fully support. And when there are pieces that they don't feel like that they can support, that there is a process and a culture of openness and a culture that supports clarity, but a culture that really supports quality assurance and continuous quality improvement. And that can be on anything, not just with a major project rollout or a new pilot or whatever. The other thing I wanted to say, and I've heard about the timing and how quickly things were pushed. Yes, this board does want things done in a timely fashion. We don't want things to take 2 or 3 years to implement. We do feel like that things can move a little bit quicker when there is this understanding that this is a pilot, which means this is not chiseled in stone. Nobody needs to, break any tablets over it. But we do need to foster this environment of it's a continual process, and we're all working together from the board to the president to the PLT and the cabinet, and all the way out. Everyone has an opportunity to make things better for everybody else. And I just want to make sure the faculty and the staff understand this board is very open, very transparent. We beg for these comments, but let's do it in a way that helps everyone and doesn't stall the process. I really, really appreciate all of those who've reached out, everyone who shared comments. Certainly, I always lean heavily on Regent Whitten and Regent Jackson, as well as Regent Heerdink and Regent Green as the faculty and staff reps. We're not there every day. We don't know the operational, perspective. They've been wonderful to answer any questions that I've ever had, and I know they've answered lots of questions for other regents, but faculty and staff need to hear loud and clear. We are here for you. We want to improve things for you. If there's a problem, let us know, but let's use a process that's open and engaging of everyone involved and not, again, and maybe I'm just too sensitive to that word resolution, but in my world, resolution has far-reaching consequences, and I don't think that a quality improvement project needs to rise to the level of a resolution. Not at this stage, not as it's being rolled out. I know we probably put some pressure on previous leadership to get it done, and I don't think that has changed. We still want, as a board, we still want improvement in quality, and we still want to get it done. But I so appreciate a better understanding of the process. So Parliamentarian and General Counsel Duncan, I apologize if I got us into a substantive conversation, but I really feel like that's what this is for. And I appreciate the opportunity to share that. So thank you. I'll hush now.
Thank you. And Regent Martin.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that, and say I'm in full support of Wendy, your comments, because just because we want to work on things expeditiously doesn't mean that we're not putting the emphasis and the thoughts in on these decisions and these actions. And I think everybody is seeing that this board has evolved over the last couple of years, and we're going to continue to evolve. And just because we make quicker decisions doesn't mean that they're not good decisions. I think we got a lot going on. I think we need to probably pull back. I mean, based on the Huron project, listening to some of the town hall meetings, we need to pull back on some of the things and really prioritize what are we doing and what do we want to get done in the next year or whatever. Maybe all these projects that we've got are important, but we can't do them all at the same time. But I never want anyone to think that just because we're making a quick decision that's probably quicker than it has been in the past, that it's not well thought out and not a lot of emphasis put on it. We're an academic setting, but I think the board is starting to think more progressively and with more promptness. I don't know.
Stevens.
Regent
sorry.
Jackson.
Yeah, I didn't know. I'm sorry, Barry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
Chair Martin.
I didn't know what else. I don't know how to finish that other than to say, if there's issues with that, then let's talk about them. But I really feel like this is the way that we need to go, is make decisions and go with them, and pull back on some of the stuff that maybe somewhere along the line prioritize.
I appreciate that. Thank you very
I'm
much.
done.
And I'll just very quickly, Pam, just say I really appreciate the comments, Regent Fletcher and Vice Chair Martin, as well as those others, my colleague Brianna that's spoken here too. And I think probably just what you said, Regent Fletcher, is, this is about continuous quality improvement. We understand that, right? We're CQI people and clinical, we understand those things. And I think I will speak for my faculty at Big Sandy and faculty that I represent across the state. I think every single faculty I've ever worked with is definitely on board with us in saying, we love our students and we are all about the success of our students and we want what's best. They are the boots on the ground that are operationally doing this, right? They're actually doing what we asked them to do. Even though we're all aiming for the same thing, we all have different roles in that. On campus, in the campus culture, sometimes life is very complicated. Sometimes there are emotions and things like that in different campuses that some campuses wouldn't be experiencing. So I think everything we do should feel supportive. We are not here for lip service for them. I don't think anybody on this board is here for lip service. We are here to say, we do support you and we want to create a system that is so robust and so progressive, so supportive of our faculty. We are in this together and we want to say that and then we want to mean it. And I think that in communicating with faculty, I do think communication perhaps was an issue. We learned a lesson from that. Every one of us learn every day, but nothing we do should ever make faculty and staff feel vulnerable. If it does, there is something we need to do differently, because if we're all on the same team and we're all rowing in the same direction, we should feel like we have each other's backs. So again, I love the passion that the faculty spoke with. And I think they are wanting exactly what we are wanting. So I applaud everyone that's willing to evaluate this and say, we all want the same thing, but let's look at how we are getting there. So I really appreciate your all's comments and all the faculty out there that are making this happen.
Joe? You have a comment?
Nope, no comments from me. I think everyone said everything way better than I could say it, so thank you.
Thank you all. That was a good conversation. I would like to say, I have something that needs to be added to the agenda, and I'm sorry for the board. We are about to roll out, we're trying to go through the bylaws and do all of the procedures that are required in the bylaws that you passed last year and a half ago. And one of those is to come up with quorum procedure and voting procedure, so that was an easy one for us to knock out. That will be put on your virtual workspace for your review. And then it will come up for vote at the March meeting. So we do need to add quorum and voting procedures.
Any other items?
I just want to tell Pam that I appreciate her for keeping us moving in the right direction and kind of pulling us back and moving us over. What she does with this board, and Hannah as well. I just really appreciate the support and the guidance always.
Thank you all.
I'll go around the table and ask Dr. Ferguson, do you have any comments you'd like to make in closing?
No, sir, I'm fine.
Scott?
No, sir.
All right, hearing none, do I hear a motion with adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
By consensus, raise your little team's hand,
Yes.
please. All right.
Thank
It
you.
looks like we're adjourned.
Next meeting.